Hello and welcome to my channel. In this tutorial, I will be showing you how to make card slots for the lining of your handbag. In the next slide, you will have the measurements for your pattern template as well as the measurements for your card slots. So let's get started by taking a look at what you'll need for this tutorial. So let's talk about everything you're going to need for this tutorial. You're going to need some pattern paper. This is the template that you're going to draw out of your pattern paper. I'm not going to show you how to draw out the template on camera because it's just a rectangle. And the measurements are 8 by 15. And I'll have that information in the description box below, and I'll probably repeat it a couple of times. All right. So your template is 8 by 15. So you'll need some pattern paper. You'll also need a pencil to draw out your pattern and your ruler to make your measurements. You'll need a fabric marking pen, some scissors. You'll need one pair of scissors for your paper and one pair of scissors for your fabric. Don't mix your two scissors because if you use your fabric scissors to cut paper, they'll get dull. A rotary cutter is not necessary, but I use it to just even up my sides if my sides are a little bit off. So I will use it to even up my sides if I need to, but it's not necessary. You'll need a notepad to write down your measurements. You'll need some lining fabric. Now this is a fat quarter. This is more than enough fabric for this tutorial. And you'll also need some lightweight woven interfacing. All right. If you're not using a fat quarter, about 1/4 of a yard of lining will work. You'll need your lining fabric and lightweight woven interfacing. If you're like me, I like to draw out a template whenever I'm making patterns that I know I'm going to use over and over again. And I think that I'm going to be using this card slot pattern for a number of my patterns now that I know how to make it and I'm confident about it. So you can absolutely draw out a template that will be 8 by 15. If you don't want to draw out a template and make your pattern piece, you can absolutely put these measurements on your fabric using a fabric marking pen or chalk roller. You can just measure onto your fabric 8 inches by 15 inches. Once you get your template drawn out, go ahead and take your fabric and your interfacing and cut one of your fabric and cut one of interfacing of your template. Then go ahead and fuse your interfacing to your fabric, and I'll meet you back here at the table. Now that you have your fabric cut and your interfacing fused to your fabric, now let's take our measurements that you wrote down and let's start to mark the measurements onto your fabric. So with the side with the interfacing showing, your first measurement is 2.25. So just take your ruler, and I'm using my friction pen and I'm marking 2.25. Alright, and if you need to, write 2.25 on here. And I'm also going to write WS for wrong side. Alright, so at that 2.25 mark, you measure down 1.75 and make your mark. I'm writing 1.75 and I'm writing RS for right side. Your next marking, starting at the 1.75, is 2.5. Make sure your lines are as straight as possible, because if they are not, then your slots will not be straight. right, that's 2.5, and that's wrong side, so I'm writing WS. So at the 2.5, you measure down 1.75. Right, 1.75, and this is RS for right side. The next line down is 2.5. So 2.5 and WS for wrong side. You have your next line, which is 1.75. And that's RS for right side. And then your final line that you're going to draw is 2.5, right? Which technically should reach to the end of your piece. All right? All right. So my 2.5 is right at the edge of that piece. So the only thing I'm going to do is I'm going to write 2.5 WS for wrong side. All right? So this is what it should look like. It's probably hard to see. I should have wrote this in marker, but alright, so your first line is 2.25, and that's WS for wrong side. Your next line is down 1.75, that's RS for right side. 2.5 wrong side, 1.75 right side, 2.5 wrong side, 1.75 right side, and 2.5 wrong side, all right, which will be the end of your fabric. All right, so now that we have all of our lines marked, we are going to start to fold this baby together. All right, so I have my iron and my ironing board, and I also have this little L-shaped ruler. This is the only thing I can find at the moment. This is going to help me keep my line straight as I fold and press my piece. Because again, you want to make sure it is as straight as possible because you don't want your card slots to look wonky. All right, so what I'm going to do first, I'm going to flip this so that the 2.5 line at the end is on my right hand side, because that's where we're starting. We're starting at the 2.5 line. So at the this line here at 2.5, I'm just going to take my ruler, put it against that line. I'm going to fold it, because remember 2.5 is the wrong side, so you're folding it with wrong sides facing. All right, I'm just taking my iron and I'm just going to press it down. I just want to press it enough so that I'll have that crease. All right, so at the 2.5 line, wrong sides facing. May seem a little confusing at first because you're doing a lot of flipping, but what I'm going to do, I'm going to flip this so that my right side is facing up, and I'm going to take my ruler and I'm going to find my 1.75 line and line it up, and I'm going to press. And I'm pressing right sides facing. All right, so this is what it should look like at this stage. Now flip it over. Right, so we got another 2.5 here, right? 2.5 is the wrong side. wrong side spacing at that 2.5. Take your iron, give it a press. Alright. Now we're flipping it over so that the right side is facing up. And we want to find that next 1.75 line. Right, so you should see it 1.75. And you maneuver this however you want to make it comfortable for you. All right, so if you need to flip it around, this way, because I'm right-handed, so it's better for me for it to be going this way when I grab the iron. All right, give it a press. All right, your next line should be 2.5. And your 2.5 lines are wrong side spacing, remember. Make sure you're keeping this as straight as possible. All right, next. You should have another 1.75 line, which is here, which is right side spacing. And this will be your last one. Starting to take shape and look like card slots, right? And then press. Right, so if you flip it to the right side, that looks like card slots. Right, so what I'm going to do now, I'm just going to make sure everything is nice and straight, and I'm just going to press. Now you're going to take this to the sewing machine and you're going to top stitch each of your 3 sections here. Now when you get ready to top stitch, you see you have a little bit here at the top. Fold that back because you don't want to top stitch this to that part of it because you won't be able to stick your cards down in it. So make sure you just fold that part back and only sew this part here, top stitch this part here. Same thing. When you get here, make sure you're lifting that part up to top stitch, and also on the last one, you're lifting this part to top stitch. All right, so let's take this to the sewing machine. All right, so let's sew these together. Now remember, this is your top, and you need to fold this back. This little piece here, fold it back. So you're only top stitching the top layer. Next, what you want to do, grab that second layer, make sure you're separating them, and you want to top stitch that second layer. Right, and finally, that third layer, separate that and top stitch that third layer. Clip all of your loose threads. And then you can take this to the ironing board and give it another good press. All right. All right, now that you have everything top stitched and neatly pressed, what you want to do, now you want to make your center line because you want 2 sets of card slots, right? You want to have 6, 3 on this side, 3 on that side. So Your piece is 8 inches wide. So at the 4-inch mark, 1, 2, 3, 4, make a mark at the 4-inch mark. And then I'm just going to take my ruler and just draw a straight line. I'm using my friction pen because this will go away with heat. So once I sew this line, then I'll iron it and that line will go away. So take it to your sewing machine, and I actually start from the bottom because if you start here and this gets caught in the sewing machine, it'll be all wonky. So start at the bottom and sew up to the top. So make sure your needle is right in line with that center line that you drew at 4 inches, and you're just going to stitch. Right, I'm going to take this to my ironing board and press so that line will go away, and I'll meet you back at the table. Alright, so now that you've done your top stitching and you've also stitched the center of your card slots, what I like to do, I like to take a card, this is my library card, and just kind of put it in here in one of the slots just to see how it fits, and also to see how much room I have on the side. This is about 1/2 inch. Alright, so just make sure you test that because you want your cards to fit in there nice and snug. Alright, so depending on the pattern you're using, for example, the Clarissa Clutch by Huffs and Puffs Patterns, they have 2 side pieces that go with the pattern. So you would place them with the right side spacing. Like that. And then you will sew 1/2 inch on both sides. And this will be one side of your actual lining. And then you would have another lining piece that measures the length and the width of whatever you're making. Alright, so that's one thing you can do. You can add 2 side pieces to it and sew whatever your measurement is. It will probably be 1/2 inch just like mine. So you would take the 2 side pieces, which will be lining pieces, line them up, and you would pin or clip and you will sew 1/2 inch on both sides. Alright, the other thing you can do, you can use your card slot as a template to cut another lining piece, right? And then you can place the lining piece that you cut with right side spacing. Right, so this is my top, this is my bottom. You would clip all the way around. Right, and then you will leave an opening in the bottom so you can turn this to the right side once you finish sewing all the way around. But be mindful to make sure that you sew 1/2 inch on both sides, because again, you want your cards to fit nice and snug in here. All right, but don't forget to leave an opening in the bottom so we can turn this to the right side. All right, and the top and the bottom you won't sew in 1/2 inch. You only sew maybe about 3/8 of an inch, because if you sew 1/2 inch, you're going to close up this top slot. Right, so be mindful of that. I can feel mine here, so I'll just use my finger as a guide. So be mindful as you're sewing. So about a 3/8 of an inch or smaller on the top and the bottom, and then 1/2 inch on the side. And you can even take a marker and mark that as a guide so you won't sew too much or not enough. All right, so I'm going to take these to the sewing machines. I'm going to sew these up, and then I'll bring them back so you can see what the finished product looks like. What I forgot to mention earlier, when you're sewing, whether you're sewing the two pieces to the side or you're sewing the lining to your card slots, make sure when you sew that you sew with this particular one. This is the bottom here. So you're sewing from the top to the bottom, because if you sew from the bottom to the top, then your card slots will be wonky. Alright, so here is the card slot that would actually be a part of your lining. And of course, if you were following an actual pattern, your measurements will probably be different. This is just an example that I did for this tutorial. So I sewed the two side pieces on, and then I will have another lining piece. It could be a zipper pocket lining, whatever you want to make. It would be the same length and width as this, and also your outside bag pieces would be the same width and length of that. And then when you open up your bag, your lining will have card slots in them, instead of it just being a regular lining. All right, so that's one. All right, so this is the one that I sewed the lining piece to. So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to trim the corners. You can also trim the sides down a little bit. That will reduce some of that bulk. Right, and then you're going to take it where you left the opening in the bottom, turn it to the right side. Make sure you poke out all of your corners. And once I get it turned to the right side, I'm going to take it to my ironing board. I'm going to press it to make it nice and neat. Right, when you're ready to take it to the ironing board, just make sure you tuck in that seam allowance from the opening that you left in the bottom. Give it a good press. So once you have it all pressed nice and neat, so what you would actually do with this one, let's say this is one of my lining pieces. I would pin this to my lining, and then I would sew the sides and the bottom. I will leave the top open because this could act as a slip pocket, and then you have your card slots here. All right, so you will sew the sides and the bottom, and when you sew the bottom, it'll close up that opening that you left to turn it to the right side. All right, so these are your two different types of card slots. I hope that you enjoyed this tutorial. If you have any questions, leave them in the comments below. If you like this video, hit the thumbs up button. Don't forget to subscribe and share, and I'll see you in my next tutorial.